You might have noticed something interesting about those people who basically ghost social media when it comes to posting photos of themselves. At first glance, you might think they're just private or maybe even insecure. But the more I've looked into the psychology behind it, the more I realize it's actually the opposite. 1. They understand what most are learning. There's this concept in psychology called contingent self-worth. Basically, when your sense of value depends on external feedback. People whose self-esteem rides on others' approval are constantly anxious and emotionally exhausted. They're stuck on a run of needing the next like, the next comment, the next little hit of validation. People who don't post photos, they've often moved past that. They've developed what psychologists call non-contingent self-esteem. Their sense of worth exists independently of what anyone else thinks. That's not arrogance, that's freedom. 2. They're not missing out, they're opting out. We naturally measure ourselves against others. Social media basically weaponizes this tendency. We're comparing our behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel, and it messes with our heads. Limiting social media use to 30 minutes a day significantly reduced depression and loneliness. People who naturally post less seem to intuitively understand what the research confirms. Constant exposure to curated perfection isn't healthy. 3. Silence can actually mean strength. The difference between the real self and the ideal self. When those two align closely, you experience what is called congruence. You're comfortable being who you actually are. You don't feel pressure to perform a better version of yourself for an audience. People who don't post much often have that alignment. They're not hiding, they're just not performing. There's a groundedness there. They know who they are when nobody's watching, and that person is enough. 4. They value depth over reach. There's also something called high self-monitoring versus low self-monitoring. High self-monitors constantly adjust their behavior based on social cues. They're chameleons, always reading the room. Low self-monitors are more consistent across situations because they're guided by internal values rather than external expectations. The people who don't flood your feed with selfies, often low self-monitors. They're the same person in public as they are in private. What you see in real life is what you get, and they don't feel the need to broadcast it. 5. Maybe they just see through it. Here's the thing that gets me. These people often understand something profound about digital life. They recognize that social media creates impression management. We're all curating a performance of self, and they've decided they don't want to live in that theater. They'd rather have 3 genuine conversations than 300 likes. They'd rather experience a moment fully than experience it through a screen while thinking about the caption. So next time you notice someone who doesn't post their picture, don't assume they are shy or antisocial. Maybe they're onto something the rest of us are just starting to figure out. You think understanding people is fascinating? Hit subscribe now. That's exactly what we do here. Take everyday behaviors and unpack the psychology behind them.